Hello, hello, it's me. It's time for a toast. I'm toasting because I'm giving something up. I'm not giving up YouTube. I'm giving up responding to comments. Not all my comments, just the comments on a couple of videos. Those videos are my original Force Awakens criticism videos, both the original version and the audio boosted version, as well as my Star Wars apologist video and a couple of the videos that kind of surround that. There's two reasons that I'm doing it. The first reason is because there's just too many comments for me to keep track of with YouTube's current interface. Figuring out who said what in what conversation, what I may have said 50 comments before 2 months ago. It's just becoming too cumbersome for me to be able to meaningfully engage in that anymore. So I'm gonna have to not. And there's thousands of comments on those videos. There's so many comments, which is great. I really value the conversations that I've had through those videos. But it's just not an easy thing for me to be able to continue those conversations. So let's move forward to other videos. If you're continuing to discuss lots of things about Star Wars or sci-fi or fantasy or any of that kind of stuff, let's move those conversations forward. The other reason is because I keep seeing the same exact sets of things being said over and over again. The same arguments and non-arguments are just being repeated in new comments. And you just get tired of responding to them over and over again and even making videos that respond to them. So I'm going to sum all those up, give kind of like my closing arguments. So if you got here from the Force Awakens video, I'll probably link it here. If your thing that you're going to say that is supposed to convince me of your position, or your thing you're going to say to make me convinced that I'm a bad person, is in this list. Hopefully I have a response to you for that. So let's go through them. The first one is all the non-arguments, ad hominem non-arguments that are directed against me. So I call those poopy head. Basically, if you're calling me a faggot, poopy head, if you're calling me a queer, if you're calling me a retard, whatever you feel like calling me, it's all the same thing. You're calling me poopy head. You're just trying to insult me to get a rise out of me or make me stop saying what I want to say by being hurt. It doesn't work, and that's it. It's not an argument, so don't bother saying it, and just, you probably shouldn't bother saying it anywhere, right? Just insulting somebody doesn't really do anything to convince anyone of anything except maybe yourself that you're not pathetic. Okay, so just skip those insults and forget about them. Number two, this is a really common one. Your expectations are too high, or the sister one, it's a children's movie. So this is one that's like, it's a silly space opera. Your expectations are too high. You need to have your expectations set right. Well, so this is actually a non-argument. This is a type of special pleading, which is a fallacy. And the special pleading is saying you should have different standards for this thing than you have for something else. Or we're going to change the standards midway through argument to, shift the goalposts in a different direction to make it either harder for you to score or easier for you to score, whatever you want to do. I don't believe in that. My standards are where they're at. There are lots of Star Wars movies that have met those standards. Force Awakens did not meet those standards, and it didn't meet those standards because it had a bad story and it was technically not well done. And I went through that in the whole video. So my expectations are not too high. If I lowered them to make Force Awakens a good movie, most of the Medea movies would be good, right? That's where it is. My expectations are where they are. I tried going into expectations do have an effect on what you're doing and what you see with the movie or what you're doing when you read. I tried to have my expectations set fairly low when I went in to see the movie. I had them set at like a Marvel movie level, which is not, I would consider, very high, and Star Wars still disappointed me. But certainly in the context of all the other Star Wars movies, I found it very disappointing. I'm not going to lower my expectations because you think the movie is a silly space opera. And then when you think about it, it's like you should like it because it sucks as much as other things suck. It's not a really good line of argument. The sort of sister argument to that is like, it's a children's movie. Star Wars are not children's movies. I know that George Lucas said that, and we should probably take his word for it because he created Star Wars. But I tend to judge people by their actions, not by their words. And so what were the actions that we see in Star Wars? What were the movies themselves? Well, we have people getting dismembered, getting hands chopped off, getting limbs chopped off, getting melted by lava, getting lit on fire. We have cyborgs with organ sacs getting their hearts exploded. We have legions of human beings being killed. Star Wars is actually way more violent than what you would think a regular children's movie would be. Not just in terms of like the graphicness of someone getting their arm cut off or getting burned alive and their face melted at the end of like episode 3, but just in terms of the death toll is very high. And maybe you can decide as a parent like how old a kid needs to be for that to like really be an appropriate story. I'm not going to argue the for the children whole thing, but really, I mean, to say it's a children's movie, it really would say a lot about what you would consider a children's movie. If you're going to say Star Wars is a children's movie, I mean, that's a particular set of standards that I think is not necessarily good for saying children's movie. So that's number 2. We'll move on past that. Number 3, this is the Revan mind wipe one. Rey's story has yet to be revealed. It's the first movie in a trilogy. You don't know everything that's supposed to go on. The things you're saying are plot holes are going to be filled in the future. I talked all about this in Star Wars Apologists. I can only judge a movie by what I see and what's in the movie. I can't judge it by things that don't yet exist. So I have to keep my judgment for Force Awakens as like, it's a bad movie that doesn't explain anything, including like bad characters that aren't developed. Maybe they'll be revealed to have had development in the past in future movies. That would be cool, I guess. But because we only have this one movie, we can't really say, oh yeah, Rey was obviously trained as a child by Luke and had her mind wiped, or some other like cockamamie story that makes her character not seem as unbelievable as it is. I can't invent those things to like make it, get rid of the cognitive dissonance in my mind, so I just end up saying Rey's not a good character. 4th one, CGI and the practical effects. This one had a lot of, this one got a lot of comments. So I basically said, there's a lot of CGI in Force Awakens, and there's a lot of CGI in the prequels, and they're the same, and I don't understand the complaints about, the people who didn't like the CGI in the prequels and then suddenly like with the way the Force Awakens works. That's not the best argument I've made. Here's like the better version of that. The CGI in Force Awakens is not convincing, and it's certainly not more convincing than it was in the prequels. So I think that when you have a consistent standard, there's things that are very unconvincing in Force Awakens and things that are also unconvincing in the prequels. The 2 characters that stand out for me, there were 2 computer-generated characters, Snoke and Maz, that were in Force Awakens and were really unconvincing. They looked very fake. Their skin moved in weird ways. They looked very, very unreal, and it didn't convince me. So the CGI, I don't think CGI is good or bad. I made a whole video on this. CGI is just a tool, but when it's not convincing, then I notice it and it annoys me. And it would be the same thing if you made like a puppet that didn't look good. If you made a bad looking puppet that like had a lazy eye or something, that would also be dumb looking too. So it's not that CGI is bad. It's just that there was bad CGI in Force Awakens. And likewise, I'll also mention, and lots of people pointed this out to me, there's a lot more practical stuff in the prequels than what people think. People think, they see the picture of like Mace Windu and all the Jedi like on a blue screen with like sand, that they're just gonna fill in the outside with like generating it with a computer, and that's not really indicative of all the stuff that went on in the production of the prequels. There was lots of actual sets. Yes, there was a lot of chroma key, but chroma key is used in everything now. And chroma key was used really extensively in the first 3 movies. So I have to have a consistent standard there, which means, hey, there was still plenty of practical stuff. There were lots of models, lots of miniatures in the prequel trilogy, so we have to give it up for that too. There wasn't quite as much CGI as there was of course like Jar Jar Binks, who wasn't convincing to me, but not everything is going to be good in both movies. I think I'm trying to have consistent standards. The next one, Luke or Anakin was a Mary Sue, which is again another actual non-argument. It's kind of like kind of like Tu Quoque, kind of like you two. It's saying, oh, you can't say that Rey is a Mary Sue because Luke and Anakin were Mary Sues. Well, that doesn't excuse Rey from being a Mary Sue, right? We can only say whether Rey's a Mary Sue or not. But Luke was really not a Mary Sue. Luke took years to do what Rey does, still probably better than him in Return of the Jedi, right? With training from Yoda and all that kind of stuff. So the fact that Rey is just able to do it, that kind of breaks the what people tend to call the suspension of disbelief. To me, I say it breaks immersion. Same thing with Anakin. We see Anakin do some things that are kind of Mary Sue-ish in Phantom Menace. Like he's able to build this droid and like work on this pod, and he's like kind of a technical genius as a kid. But he's not like a Mary Sue in the Force. He's just a Mary Sue in like he's not. Rey is a Mary Sue in her technical knowledge of ships and in her ability to use the Force. Anakin's just a Mary Sue, I guess, in his like ability to build droids. Then, of course, we see him in the next movie. Years later, years of training under his belt, he's able to actually do things. And of course, we also see Qui-Gon Jinn fail at a Jedi mind trick on like a resistant subject in Phantom Menace, kind of letting us know that that's not something that's always pulled off, and yet Rey's able to pull it off without ever really knowing about it. She has to be told what the Force is at a certain point. So like she doesn't really, you have Han that's like, it's all real, the Force is real. So she doesn't really know how to do that, we can assume. So there's lots of stuff that I think goes with that. So even if Luke and Anakin were Mary Sues, that doesn't excuse this one, but they're not as much a Mary Sue as this one, especially not Luke. Anakin, I think you can make a better case for it, for sure, that he's a little bit more of a Mary Sue than Luke was. The next one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's a fantasy. This is a fantasy. Anything could happen in a fantasy. No, that's not true. This is something that casual fantasy fans say a lot, and I know that might sound a little insulting. It's not meant to be like, you're just some casual fantasy fan. No, it's just kind of true. People that don't sit around reading like Brandon Sanderson or Michael Moorcock or something like that, they're not going to have quite the same perspective on fantasy universes, settings, and magic systems as someone who does. So I just get this argument a lot from people who their only fantasy that they've watched is like Game of Thrones and Star Wars. So like, it's a fantasy, anything can happen. It's like, actually, that's not the case. A fantasy, even a high fantasy, has its own set of rules that the universe adheres to. And you have to establish those rules so that people can feel danger and that there's expectations for what's possible. That's all part of good story writing. And we have that in the other Star Wars movies. We have some kind of rules that govern how the Force works and how ships work a little bit. And we have a lot of violations of those in Force Awakens. So that's why that immersion gets broken. No, just because it's a fantasy, that doesn't mean anything can happen. You're thinking what's called bizarro. Bizarro, literally anything could happen. That's a different form of literature than fantasy. So that's my rebuttal to that. I guess number 7 here. You have no imagination. That's demonstrably false. You can head over to dvspress.com where I keep a lot of my books that you can read for free. So yes, I have lots of imagination. So it's demonstrably false that I have no imagination. But I don't need imagination to watch a movie. It's not the audience's job to have imagination at a movie. It's the filmmaker's job to have the imagination to craft a convincing, beautiful, meaningful story and display it to someone in a way that they are convinced by it, right? It's not the audience's job to bring in their imagination. Otherwise, I would have gone into Force Awakens and I would have just imagined a good movie instead of what I saw. So no, it's not the job of the audience to have imagination. Imagination is not required to watch a fantasy movie or anything else. All that's required is the ability to understand a good story and what's being told visually. Related to that also is like the whole suspension of disbelief argument. It's like you're failing to suspend your disbelief. Like it is the audience's job somehow to forget that things should act in the way that we normally expect them to act, right? And this, like the all the violations of the rules of physics that people talk about, you need to suspend your disbelief. The fact that we wouldn't see a whole system of planets exploding gigantically in a day sky light years away from where it would happen, even if it happened in the same system. Jupiter's like a tiny bright dot in the sky. You wouldn't see it as a bright red thing, even if someone blew up Jupiter and you were in the same system. It just wouldn't happen. It defies all knowledge of everything. And then I've even had people say, like, why can't the speed of light be different? It's like, why would it be? They've never said it is. Things are supposed to happen the way you normally assume they would happen unless they're said otherwise. It goes back to the whole fantasy magic system thing. Magic system's kind of a set of rules. So same thing. It's not the audience's job to suspend disbelief. It's the filmmaker's job or the storyteller's job to convince the audience that what they're seeing could in fact be real. Okay. The next one, this is actually a pretty good one. Kylo Ren is a complex character. You know, calling him incompetent, he just has more going on than other characters. That's actually really kind of valid point. And Kylo Ren does have a lot more going on than, say, Darth Vader. At least what we see in the movie. However, you know, so we see him like having these inner struggles, and we don't really see Darth Vader having that so much until maybe like Return of the Jedi. But you have to think about what his role is in the movie, right? The role for him and what he does throughout the movie is he acts as the antagonist. And when you have an incompetent antagonist, that removes a bit of the tension from the story. Because he's constantly incompetent and failing at what he's trying to do, it's like, well, yeah, he's failing because he has complexity. It's like, why doesn't Rey have complexity? None of the protagonists have any complexity. Only the antagonist has the ability to fail. It's like, well, because he's incompetent, then the effect is we just think that he's not a threat. Okay, so he ends up being coming off as a really bad villain, besides all the things that people say that are kind of subjective, like I don't like him, I don't like the way he looks, I don't like the way he sounds. That's kind of more subjective. I think more about how he comes off in the story. He comes off as basically a buffoon, and because of that, we don't really view him as a threat. We're not afraid of him. We don't really care about what his aims are because we know he'll probably fail at them because he seems to continually fail at them. So that's my whole thing. It's like, yeah, Kylo Ren seems to have more going on, certainly more going on than the Mary Sue main characters, but that doesn't really serve the story. All right, I don't think it really serves the story. And the last one is always like the prequels sucked, mumble, mumble, mumble. Like that somehow prequels being bad has anything to do with this movie being bad. It's another kind of like U2 thing, kind of deflecting away. If any other movie being bad doesn't have an effect on a different movie being bad, right? You kind of have to view them as independent things. Even if they're kind of part of a series, one movie may be better than another. You know, you have Wrath of Khan's really good. That doesn't like make, Wrath of Khan doesn't suck because the original Star Trek movie, the motion picture sucked. And it's not good because motion picture sucked. It's good just on its own. And motion picture wasn't as good. I don't think it sucked, but it wasn't as good just on its own, right? You have to view some of these things. It's okay to separate these out and view them as different things. So, anyway, that's sort of my summation of the constant sort of barrage of things I get over and over again. So if one of yours was in there, hopefully you received an adequate explanation of my stance on it, and have a great day. Thanks for watching. If you're a returning subscriber, hopefully this sums up a lot of the things that we could kind of put to rest. The Force Awakens talks, we've talked about it a lot. We've digested it. We've kind of thought about it. Now we can think about the next thing that we're going to talk about, whatever that is. Okay, so I really, really appreciate the conversations. Feel free to comment on this video, subscribe, let me know what you think and what you want to hear. I'm always appreciative of the conversations, even when I have to abandon them at a certain point because it's just not feasible for me to continue engaging. And so I sincerely hope you guys have a great night and a great time. And thank you again for watching.